Here's how I negative paint. I've created this exercise for you where we're going to be layering stars, a very simple shape, and I'm going to show you a trick to do this, and that is I would actually make my own little stencil cutouts. It's really simple to do. I have some scrap paper, and I'm just going to draw a star on here. I don't care what kind of a star, the size, we just want them to vary, have a little bit different shapes. And I'm just going to cut this out. 1, 2, 3, and my star is going to be done. And now I have a little stencil I can use as I negative paint. Put it down on my paper. And this way I don't have to keep drawing a star shape as I work through this painting. I also like that these are not perfect star shapes. I think that's really important. I like the way they have a little bit of a different shape to each one. So I have 3 different stars here. And all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to lay them down on the paper. At this stage of negative painting, the only thing that matters is that the stars do not touch. On this very first layer, they don't touch. Now, I'm going to pencil it around them, and I'm doing a very light pencil mark. It doesn't need to be too dark for what I'm going to be doing. So that's number 1 star, number 2 star, and then I have a 3rd star. My paper is probably about I'm going to guess, maybe a 7 by 7 inch piece of paper. This is just a practice. This is a way for your brain to start to understand and accept negative space. Negative space is a little bit of a learned thing. Your brain needs to really wrap itself around the idea that we're not painting the object, we're painting around the object. My value has to be extremely light. In order for me to build this painting up, I need to deepen the value of each layer. So if I start with a value here, it doesn't give me a lot of room to go dark. But if I start with a really light value, it gives me plenty of space to fill in with darker pigment. The first layer of stars will be the white of the paper. And it's your choice. Absolutely any colors you want to do are absolutely fine. Checking the value, the lightness or the darkness of this pigment. And I know that's going to dry lighter. So that's going to be my first value. I'll let it drop more water because I want to make sure this value is very light. Now this hematite, I'm watching it in my palette. It's really breaking down into a gray and almost a pink. So that tells me I'm going to be adding a little bit of pink to this. Now I want to paint completely around these shapes, right to the edge of the paper, around each shape. I can make the shape pointier. I'm going to follow pencil lines, but they don't have to be so exact. Here's where I can say, oh, I'm going to change a couple little shapes. This is your easiest layer. This layer is done 1, 2, 3. I've got lots of open space, and all I'm going to be doing is painting around the star shapes. Make sure every part of the paper is covered except the stars themselves. But everything else needs to change in value. Now I'm going to pick up, I have a little bit of this Ronadite color, another Daniel Smith color, and it's in the pink family. And I'm just going to start to touch this in just lightly. I'm going to let that bleed in through here, and it's just going to give some color change and some interest to this layer. And this is just a little water. Water will also leave some marks and just make it interesting. Okay. Now the next layer of stars is going to be the color and the value of what we just painted our background. So most important, this must be 100% dry in order for me to move along. My paper is 100% dry, and now I need to add the next layer of stars. And it's really simple. I want you to think about just placing a star down anywhere on the paper. And I'm going to trace that shape in that spot. Now, what's most important is I'm never going to trace over the previously white star. If I didn't paint it, it needs to remain 100% white. So let's start over here where there is no star. But as I come across here, I have to lift my pencil to do this corner. And then I have to lift my pencil to come back here because I can't draw over that nice white star. Same thing here. Stop. This shape here is not going to show. It's underneath or behind that part of the star. So wherever I'm hitting the star, I'm stopping and picking up my pencil. So now that shape is going to sit behind that star. Okay? And that's how simple it is. Take another one. Let's throw it over here. Let's place it like this. So I want to make it where I have lots of overlapping. So I'm not going to do anything where this is white. I'm coming over here and I'm coming over here. This side, I'm jumping over the little point that's there and I'm coming down. This point, I can show the whole thing. This point right here, I have to lift my pencil. I don't want to hit that, but in here, I have this edge. And now the point of this star is on the other side of the point of that star. So you see how I picked up my pencil and continued on. Let's keep this one right in my hand. And let's put this right over here. Okay. The only thing I don't want to do is I want to overlap these stars, but I don't want to overlap the layer of stars I'm doing right now. And another thing is don't try to jump ahead and say, oh, I'm going to just put all my stars in, pencil them all in, and then I'll start painting. It doesn't work like that. You will get so confused and you'll end up painting all sorts of layers and getting totally lost. And I don't want that to happen. Because when that happens, then you give up. You say to yourself, oh, I can't do this. It's not working for me. And this will work for you. Just practice. Okay, next layer. I already have my puddle. I'm going to add more of that hematite to it so that it goes darker. Always changing the value. That's the constant on this. Every layer, the value must be changed. So now I have the white of the paper, and I'm probably about here in value. And I want to go between these two, come up higher in my value. So I just needed more pigment. And this time I'm going to try to pay attention and add more pinks in as I'm working. I can change the absolute color of every layer if I choose, but most important is the value. I must be making sure every time I do a layer that the value is a little bit darker. Okay, my little piece of paper, and let's take a look at this value. And you could see it's darker. And that's what I want. So we're going to go just a tiny bit darker because I know it's going to dry lighter. And let's start painting. I usually paint from the middle out, and that's just my choice. You could do anything you're comfortable with, but I love getting the middle done. If I put my paint down and I immediately start to feel that it is too dark, all I'm going to do is add a little bit of water. You see, I'm painting around the tip of this star that's underneath this white one. And I'm coming to this side and I'm painting around this point. And you can see how immediately the second layer of stars begins to appear. Staying inside them, I'm staying in the middle right now. You can also see when I say you can go too dark too fast, how quickly that can happen. Because if I went dark now with this layer, I wouldn't be able to put another layer, a third layer on. Because I'd have no place to get darker. There's a tiny spot in here that needs to go dark. And these spots are really important. Don't forget about all these little spots, because that little spot helps bring this piece of the star out. And this looks like the last little spot that hasn't yet been painted. And you could see how much less of the paper we're painting, because more of it is going to be left in the negative space. Okay, cool. So we have our second layer of paint went down. So I have my first layer of stars, these three, the nice and bright and white. My next layer are these three stars. And you could see when I said before, I'm going to throw a little pink in. Look at how the pink is modeled in here. It just makes it more interesting. So that was my second layer of paint. It needs to be dry, and then I'm going to start the next layer. The layer must be dry, otherwise we won't get nice crisp edges. Things will start to bleed out. Okay, we're just repeating the previous layer. So now I'm going to just throw in a star. If I want to do a big one that's half off the paper, I can come in this way. I can do this one here. All I'm looking for is that it overlaps, which really means underlap, but that sounds really weird. So let's place it here, because now I have different areas of the star that are going to peek out from behind this 1, 2, 3 stars in a row. So again, I have this shape in here. I don't pencil over the white of that star. So that's a point. There's a point over here. There's a little point coming through here, but the edge is disappearing behind. This point I can see completely. So there's really only this point that's completely seen. This one, the tip of this one, and the tip of this one are all coming from behind this star. Let's repeat that over here. So I'm just turning this so that I can see. I want to give myself where, okay, I like that because I have a point coming out here, 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 and here. So I just start penciling around the shapes, any of the shapes that show. This shows here. And you start to see we're going to start running out of paper. Okay. So I have one here and one here. And I'm just staying with this star because the shapes don't really, I'll change it a little. They don't really matter that much because you're not seeing much of it at this point. I don't want to touch these others. I'm just looking for a good place to put this so it pops out. How about right there? So I've got this little piece of point I can see. I can see this, almost this whole point. I'm just barely skimming by that one. And then I'm coming all the way down here. And I'm grabbing that point. And right in here, I can put a little tiny point. 1, 2, 3. And how about the edge of this one? Let's have this long point coming in here. Okay. Now all I have to do is darken my puddle. And my puddle gets a little smaller because look at how much space I'm not painting. And when you look at it that way, you're saying there's a lot of space in here that I'm not going to be painting. And I'm going to add a little bit of that pink right into this mix. Oh, that's pretty. Okay. Paper. Okay. And that'll really make that pop. Coming into the middle, and I see a point here and a point here. So I'm going to start in this small space. Remember, I'm not just outlining. I'm making sure every time I do a layer that it's completely pulled to the edge of the paper. Okay. And really redefine. Now I just went over a spot I shouldn't have. Let me pick that up right away. I can see a pencil line here, which tells me this is part of that star. So again, don't feel if you make a mistake that your painting is ruined. It's not ruined. First of all, these are just practice pieces. They come out really beautiful and they do look nice when you can frame them. But I don't want you to look at it and say, oh my God, I made such a mistake. No, you just practiced. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, and my fourth one is really just this little point coming in off the edge. Okay, now I painted around everything. Okay, I'm dry. And now what happens is I don't have much room left. So I could just squeeze in another shape, but there really is not much room left in here. But I want to show you how I can go even darker. So let's get this penciled in here. Okay, so I have, because I want this to be dark, I have my 3 pigments. I have hematite, genuine. I have some ultramarine blue. And lastly, I have the ranodite. Okay, and those are the 3 I'm going to be grabbing from. So now I have that dark star shape right back there. And the only reason I just painted that one shape in is I really needed to see it. Okay. And now we're going to start adding more stars. This is a fun way to practice your negative painting. And I'm not going to add any more stars because it's just not enough space. So now I just need to take my time and paint everything dark. So I need to make sure this value runs everywhere. I'm just reinforcing a couple little edges. And now how cool is that? That we negative painted layers of beautiful stars. When it's dry, we'll take the tape off. Now, if you go, stay on my YouTube channel and look for the video on circles, how to negative paint using circles. It is the simplest shape to practice with, because there isn't a lot of little tiny spots to go around. But I think that once you've practiced with that, you really need to move on to a little more complicated shape. The other thing I'm going to show you very quickly on here is, if I have, like, I'll use this as an example, this point that's on top of this star. And if I find, when I look through here, that the values are all too much the same, I can just go in with some clean water. And I'll start with this pink one, and I'm just coming in very gently, and I'm just lifting a little bit of the pigment. Not too much, because I don't want to bring the paper back to white. But you see how now that definitely looks like it's lighter, and therefore it's on top of this one. So this was a great exercise where you can practice your layering and your negative painting. Please try it, and try it with colors that you might not be as familiar with. Pull them out, play with them, and you'll learn about some of the qualities about that particular paint and that color. But most of all, have a lot of fun. This is easy for you to do, and let me know how you do. And you know what? I'll see you in my next video. Have a great day.